A warm welcome for Elder Ahmad Corbitt, General Authority 70 of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and President Zaytuna College, Hamza Yusuf.
Well, we are grateful to be here together. There's a little bit of an irony to this conversation, just to start off. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf is an Irish American who is Muslim, and you have before you a Black American Christian, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, named Ahmed. So if we can start off with why we agreed to do this.
Well, I think getting to know one another is very important. I think America is uniquely positioned to teach a lot of places about civic society and religious freedom. I mean, we obviously have our failures, but we do have something extraordinary here. I teach on a place called Holy Hill, which is in Berkeley, California, which is ground zero for the dissolution of Western civilization. But despite that fact, we have several religious institutions there. There are several seminaries and religious colleges, and we all get along. And I think the hallmark of that possibility is education. I think the more educated people are, the easier it is to get along with people, because one of the biggest hallmarks of stupidity is a kind of absolute certainty about your views and positions. And the more educated you get, the greater understanding that the less you actually know. You know, the Quran says, as of knowledge, you've been given a very small amount. And so there's kind of a certitude that too many people have that creates a very ugly world.
And yet conviction, and I think we all relate to this, conviction strengthens us, conviction drives us, it motivates us to help others. But there's something about a humility in our conviction, right, that affords someone else the same right. One of the articles of faith of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is that we claim the privilege of worshiping Almighty God according to the dictates of our conscience and afford all people the same privilege. It goes, let them worship how, where, and what they may. And that's a fundamental tenet to us, and it is to Islam.
Well, I think, the Quran is unique from our world scriptures that are pre-modern, that it actually declares there's no coercion in faith. And the idea behind that, obviously, is that to coerce people into belief is to create a society of hypocrites. When you compel people to believe something that they really, truly don't believe, they end up just practicing a faith hypocritically. And hypokritos, which in Old Greek meant actor.
To faith,
was an actor. So the actors were called hypocrites because they were pretending to be something they weren't. And real, genuine faith is always sincere. And so you have to allow that. But I think to your point about humility, from the Greek, from the earth, the humus of the earth, that we are from earth. And earth is they say the devil is created from fire, which is a rising, it's a rising element, whereas Adam was created from earth and water, which both are elements that move towards move towards the ground, earth. And so just to be humble. We have a great scholar, Imam Shafi'i, who said, whenever I got into an argument with anybody, I always prayed to God that the truth would be manifest on his tongue so that I could submit to it. And he also said, I believe that I'm right and my interlocutor's wrong, but I could be wrong and my interlocutor could be right. So to enter into a true dialogue is to recognize that we could be wrong about positions, and just to know, is a very difficult thing.
Well, and it's funny you say submit, since that's the whole basis behind Islam.
Right, submission.
Submission
to the will of
God's
God.
will.
On earth as it is in heaven.
Yes.
Yeah.
which is fundamental Christian doctrine.
It's Christian doctrine. It's aligning with God. It's the idea. We all want to understand, the believers, we want to understand what is God's will for us as individuals and how we can navigate this world. But this place is a very confusing place. It's very difficult for people. Young people, particularly now, are just really having a difficult time.
I wonder how we can inspire more. I loved the panel yesterday, Mile Green, World Relief, and Islamic Relief Worldwide. Just a beautiful discussion. And Pastor Roberts mediating it and facilitating it and just sounding like they were going to leave the stage and go do something together. And we need to do more of that. I think as we serve humanity more closely together and combine resources even, I think that that ignorance that you talked about earlier fades away. I think the humility rises.
Yeah. And one of the Arabic word for ignorance is the same word for zealotry. Jahil. Jahil is a zealot as well. Because the most ignorant people, again, are people that have absolute certainty about their own position. It's not about certainty about belief in God, but being certain about what
I'm glad you said that, because I'm certain God lives.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we should be certain about our faith, but we should not be certain about our understanding of our faith, that we absolutely understand. We have the only position that's valid within our faith. I mean, obviously the magisterium, there are articles of faith that we should believe in with certainty, but I'm talking about understanding what is the will of God in this given situation. To act as if you are acting on behalf of God, like a theocracy.
Right.
God is in heaven, and God rules, and I don't mean physically, but God rules, but God has given us intelligence and intellect, and so we have to reason. We have to think about what is the right position in this situation. And this idea that I can't allow for the possibility that somebody else might have a more valid opinion. And obviously there are many difficulties. True religion is dialectical, in my belief. True religion is always dialectical, and that's why you have people, all great religions have ironed out doctrines through great dialectical process. Because, the light of God is refracted through the prism of the intellect. And if it's not refracted through that prism, it blinds, it doesn't guide.
And that refraction is facilitated, in my opinion and experience, most powerfully and clearly and effectively through service, through action. It's Christians, we believe faith without works is dead, similar concepts in Islam. And so as we put I love Pastor Robert's call. Elder Soares spent this morning and yesterday just praising and lauding Pastor Robert's commitment that we all work together, and others feel that way too, and so do we in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Brief story. The church had done multiple humanitarian projects that impacted favorably Muslim communities. And so we were to receive an award from Islamic Relief Worldwide. I happened to be in the area and attended this annual meeting in North New Jersey and received the award on behalf of the church. As I'm sitting there waiting to go up and receive this and make a little speech, it occurred to me that the communications director for Islamic Relief was a white American convert to Islam named Susan Smith. I'm sitting there, and it occurs to me, here is a Muslim named Smith giving an award to a Latter-day Saint named Ahmed. Where does this happen?
Yeah. In America.
In America. But increasingly throughout the world.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know it, the first president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was Joseph Smith, and so it was even more ironic for me. But we need to do more of that.
I think good works are important, and there's a lot of things that we can work together globally. But I also think as religious people, creed is important too. Dorothy Sayers, who's a detective writer, but she's an underrated theologian, wrote a very important book, I think, called Creed or Chaos. And it's also the importance of having right, the Buddhists begin with right thinking. So getting your understanding right is very important also. Because if it's only works, then we can all just be Boy Scouts. We don't really need religion.
Well, if we say faith without works is dead, we could probably say works without faith is sort of
what's
dying.
motivating you and why are you doing it?
That's
What's
right.
incentivizing you?
That's right.
But we have a global situation. We have crises in many, many places. There's a lot of disruptions in many places. And I think more than anything, we need a deeper understanding because we have to act with intelligence. And intelligence is always on shorthand, but it seems particularly problematic today, partly because historically we've had educated classes that have been kind of guiding lights for most cultures and civilizations. Education was democratized in America in many ways, and at the points where education was greatest, I think you had some of the wisest people. But our educational system, even in the United States, has really, and as a president of a college, I can really say this, we're having a hard time getting kids to read books. We're having, we're competing with this extraordinary technology. I mean, I've translated for many years, but Google Translation has reached a point where it's made, I think, a lot of translators superfluous. So we're going to see that increasingly. We've got a lot of challenges, and I think religious faith, more than anything, is going to be the most important element in being able to survive what's coming because things are getting really difficult for people out there. There's a lot of mental illness. We're seeing the effects of all this. And I think, faith is that amazing thing that enables people to carry on as a species. I mean, just if you take the Black experience, when you think about the people that came across that ocean in those ships, and yet it was faith because they brought, at a certain point, because they had such high death rates, they actually brought these religious singers onto the ships. There's a beautiful book called Africa and the Blues, which is about these singers that they brought on to keep the spirits of the people, inspire hope. And the Black church in this country did amazing things to keep people alive, and with that hope, swing low, sweet chariot. That was what enabled people in great tribulation and calamities to survive. It was faith. And once you lose faith, despair, you can live a hedonistic lifestyle for so long, but sickness, things in the world come to you. And once you lose faith, despair is the inevitable consequence.
Well, what questions do you have for a Latter-day Saint?
One thing is, I think it's a very interesting thing of being in a state where you have quite a few people that actually practice the faith.
And keep in mind that most Latter-day Saints live outside of the United States by millions.
Right, but I'm talking about the United States.
You're talking about Utah.
And I think what's interesting to me, Michigan, I don't know if people saw the imam that supported the president. He actually brought him up on stage. He predicted that the Lions would win the Super Bowl also, but he predicted that Trump was going to win the election. And I think people don't realize that Michigan has a huge Muslim population,
For
so
sure.
it's becoming kind of like the Utah.
The Utah of Islam.
Yeah, of Islam. And so I'm wondering what that's going to look like.
But by the way, since I grew up, born and raised in Philadelphia, what did he say about the Eagles?
Yeah, hope springs eternal.
Okay. By the way, Andy Reid is a member of our church, and a good friend of mine. Of course, Latter-day Saints had suffered some persecution early on in the United States. Yeah. There was in one of the states. I hate to keep saying the name of it, but one of the governors in 1838 infamously issued an executive order calling the Mormons enemies who needed to be exterminated or driven from the state.
Right.
And of course, Joseph Smith, whom I mentioned earlier, was martyred, killed in state custody in a jail. Another thing so we need religious freedom. I mean, it's fundamental. We need to all do what we can to make it happen. And let me share just another story about humanitarian outreach. I think it's important that our outreach not be connected to proselytizing.
Right.
It must be sincere,
right,
and motivated by a love of people. We would say God's children. Quick story, the 2004 tsunamis that devastated South Asia. Our church responded to that, had friends there, members there in Indonesia, and particularly the Aceh province. And so we asked, how can we help? The first grim answer was, we need tens of thousands of body bags,
right,
believe it or not.
Yeah.
But so the church stepped up and helped rebuild fisheries and mosques. But the thing that most moves me is that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints donated 7,000 copies of the Holy Quran to our Muslim brothers and sisters in the Aceh province. That had nothing to do with proselytizing.
Yeah.
It had to do with
an act of goodwill.
An act of goodwill, what they needed to feel,
which I think will go to
hope.
It'll really help a lot, because if I was going to recommend one book for this audience, it would be a book by William Polk, who was a professor of history at Harvard and University of Chicago. He wrote a book in 2016. He was actually Kennedy's advisor on the Middle East. He was an Arab scholar as well as being a historian. But he wrote a book called Crusade and Jihad, the 1,000-year war between the North and the global North and the Muslim South. And it's a very eye-opening book that'll help, I think, a lot of people understand just the immense trauma that imperialism has had on large parts of the world. And Aceh is a good example of that. A lot of people don't know hundreds of thousands of people were killed. They had first the Portuguese, then the Dutch, then the English, then the Dutch again, then the English, then the Japanese. These are all occupations that had horrific impact. And the Indonesians are a beautiful people. They're very humble people.
Very much so.
They're really wonderful people. And so that's just an example. I think there's a great willingness to forgive in the human heart. I mean, Africans I lived in West Africa, and I'm always struck, even within the African American community, there's a great willingness to forgive, but there has to be a kind of goodwill that elicits that forgiveness. And if that goodwill's not there, forgiveness is hard to come by.
Well, and forgiveness is a great note to end on for both a Christian and a Muslim. And so thank you for your brotherhood and your friendship, and let's promote forgiveness and religious freedom, huh? Thank you.